Hi, my name is Tina and this is Knitting Blooms. You can find show notes for everything I talk about on my blog at www.knittingblooms.com. And if I miss a link, please feel free to contact me on Ravelry as Bloomingknitter, or you can email me at knittingblooms@gmail.com. Come and join the Ravelry group so you can be eligible for all the prize drawings. And be sure to introduce yourself so that I can get to know you also. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as Bloomingknitter. And don't forget to click the like button on Facebook for Knitting Blooms. Today I'm going to show you 2 ways of inserting a lifeline in lace. You will need some crochet cotton, which is like number 10 crochet cotton. It comes in a ball such as this, or you can buy a larger ball like this. I highly recommend that you use a white or neutral color. I have noticed in the past that some of the darker colors, particularly red and purple, do sometimes bleed, mostly when you just get them wet, but you don't want to take that chance if you're using a light colored yarn for your project. So I highly recommend a neutral color, either a tan, a light tan, or a white. If you go with the white, I think you will not be sorry. You will also need a darning needle, and or you can use the other method is going to be using a cable such as the Knit Picks cable that has a hole in the cable. The first thing you need to decide is how often you want to put in your lifelines. The more often the better, especially if you are new to lace knitting and are not confident in your skills to not drop stitches and whatnot. Lace is very difficult to pick up if a stitch drops down and runs down the work, which is why lifelines are used. So my suggestion is to put them in as often as you feel you need to. I don't use lifelines with every project, but I do use them quite often, and you just need to decide how often you are going to need to use them. I do recommend that you insert your lifelines on a wrong side row, after a wrong side row, because usually a wrong side row is a row that doesn't typically have yarn overs and increases or decreases, so your stitch count remains the same. And also you want to insert your lifeline on a row where you know the stitch count is correct. Sometimes designers will include this information in their pattern, say for instance at the end of a chart, or they might even include it line by line. But make sure that all of your stitch count is correct and all your yarn overs are there, and so forth before you put your lifeline in. It makes it very difficult to fix mistakes if you have missed a yarn over, or if you have forgot to do a knit two together or something like that. So make sure all of your stitches are correct on that particular row before you insert your lifeline. And like I said, I do recommend inserting the lifeline at the end of a chart if you are working with a very slippery yarn or a pattern that is very intricate. You may want to insert a lifeline more often. I know that if I am working with a slippery yarn or working with an intricate pattern, I will insert a lifeline every couple of rows because I know I can remove it when I realize that I don't need it anymore. One thing that you do need to make note of when you're inserting your lifeline is the row in which you're inserting it, so that if you do in fact have to make use of that lifeline and rip back to it, you know which row you need to start your pattern on again when you start knitting again. So now I'm going to show you the first method using a darning needle to insert your lifeline. You will need a length of the crochet cotton, as I showed you earlier. I like to make my length twice as long as the width of the whatever I'm putting the lifeline in, so that after I put the lifeline in, I can take the ends and tie them together. So, one thing to note when you are doing a lifeline, if you use stitch markers, whether you put them in between your pattern repeats, or if you just use them at the end, I like to just use them at the end, designating my edge stitches. Just know that if you run your lifeline through your stitch marker, you will need additional stitch markers, because the next row your lifeline will be hanging onto that stitch marker. So when I do a lifeline with the darning needle, I always make sure that I don't include the stitch marker in the lifeline. When I show you the technique with the Knit Picks needles, you will need to either remove your markers, or you will need to have extra markers on hand. So first I'm going to show you the technique with the darning needle. And this is very, very easy. So it's very simple to do this with the darning needle. All you're going to do is run your needle along the base underneath the cable, and just pick up all the stitches. And again, I'm not going to include my stitch marker here. I'm going to pass the stitch marker, but I'm going to make sure that I catch all of the stitches that are currently on the cable. And you want to make sure that you're not splitting these stitches as you do this. If you need to pull through just to make it a little easier, you just want to run the darning needle along the base. This is the easiest way to do this, especially if you're not using a needle that has a pinhole in it, such as the Knit Picks needles. And again, you just run along the bottom of the stitches. So here is the lifeline fully in place. It just runs along the bottom of the needle, and I have made the string long enough so that I can tie the two ends together. Now, it is unlikely that this is going to come out of the stitches, but what will happen is, my bad luck is, I will pull the end or something, and I will end up losing my lifeline. So I like to tie the two ends together. It doesn't really get in my way all that much, as long as I have my my lifeline long enough, and when I'm done with it, I can just cut it and pull it out. Now, one thing that I want to mention about using the lifeline is that when you go to knit your next row, you want to make sure that as you're knitting those stitches, that you do not get that lifeline in your stitches. You want to make sure that that stays below your needle as you're knitting, because you want to be able to easily pull that lifeline out when you are done with it. And if it gets caught up in your stitches from multiple rows, it could make it difficult for you to pull that lifeline out. So I just try and keep it running along the bottom of my needle as I'm knitting. Now, there may come a time when the lifeline slips up a little bit. You just need to make sure that as you're knitting the stitches across, that lifeline stays down below and is not in your stitches. Now, I just inserted this lifeline in my work after I completed a wrong side row. Now, if you are using a needle type that has the pinhole in it, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to insert the crochet cotton into your needle prior to starting your wrong side row. Now I'm going to show you how to use the Knit Picks needles with the pinhole in the cable. Now, Knit Picks has this. I believe Knitter's Pride has this. I'm not sure what other needle companies have this, but this is how you do it. When you get ready to start a wrong side row, what you're going to do is you're going to insert the crochet cotton into this little hole in the needles. Again, you're going to do this when you start a wrong side row, because what this is going to do is it is going to pull this string through your stitches for your wrong side row as you knit them. So this is just a practice piece here, just to show you so you can see how it works. But again, you're going to put it through the needle that is your working needle. Whether you work from right to left, you're going to put it in your right needle. If you work from left to right, then you're going to put it in your left needle. It's always going to be the needle that you use to knit your stitches. And you're just going to work across the row. And this, again, is just a basic swatch. So there's no lace or anything like that on this row. But this is just to give you an idea of how this method works. You just want to make sure that you pull this string through far enough so that it doesn't accidentally come out. Because if it accidentally comes out while you're knitting across, then you've lost your lifeline there. So you're just going to go ahead and knit across, and as you knit across, the string is going to go through the stitches with the cable. And then when you're done with the row, your lifeline will be in place. You just want to make sure that as you're knitting that you don't lose that lifeline out of the cable. Now this is a very short piece, so I will be able to show you exactly how it works. So I've just knit across this entire row, okay, and you'll see my lifeline is right there. But as soon as I pull my stitches past, the lifeline goes through the stitches, and now I can pull it through, pull it out of the needle, and now my lifeline is in the row that I just knit. It's through those stitches that I just knit. And that's all there is to it.
Okay, I am now going to give you a quick demonstration on how to mark your knit companion with a row that you have a lifeline on. You simply will be going down to this edit button right here, in which to edit this particular chart. Click on edit, and the lifelines are under stitch markers, so you click on stitch markers. Now you will have to use your 2-finger pinch to get your chart to where you can see all of it, so you know where to put your lifeline. Then you're going to click on the Add New button and click Lifeline. You can then select to have a different color for your lifeline, whatever color you decide to use. I'm going to choose this color. And then what you're going to do is find the row that you have put your lifeline in and select it. As you can see, this is a wrong side row, and I have selected the row in which I put my lifeline. And then you can go back and click the file, and you will see here that the lifeline is highlighted here. Now when I change to another row, you will see that the lifeline is still highlighted here and continue to go up from there. And then you will know when you have to rip back to your lifeline, then the next row that you will start knitting on after your lifeline, after you rip back, is this row here. So your lifeline is here, and then you would start knitting on this row.
I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial on how to insert a lifeline. If you have questions or comments about this tutorial, please contact me at bloomingknitter@gmail.com or on the blog knittingblooms.com. You can also find additional tutorials on the blog at knittingblooms.com. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.